Hello, my name is Bridget Hilton, and I'm a Shrewsbury resident and parent, and I'm honored to be here today to be interviewing Sanam Zaer, who is a candidate for Shrewsbury School Committee. Welcome, Sanam.
Thank you.
If you could you just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
So as Bridget mentioned, my name is Sanam Zaer. I live here in Shrewsbury with my husband and 4 children. I grew up next door in Grafton, and we've been in Shrewsbury for about 5 years. I think that sums up.
Wonderful. Could you tell us why you were running for school committee?
I'm running for school committee primarily to encourage more new people to run. Sometimes we see the same people running every year, and when I moved here, I'm not a politician. It's a little bit of an uncomfortable space for me, but we've been building this. So for those of you who aren't aware, we've been building this advocacy space called A Better Shrewsbury, and in that group, we've been kind of educating voters, trying to get people more involved in local government, and as part of that, we've been trying to encourage more people to run for local office. So. I guess to put my money where my mouth is, I'm also running for local office to encourage new and more diverse voices to run for office.
That's a wonderful reason to be getting involved in the community. Thank you for sharing that. Could you tell us a little bit about your background as it relates to education and why you think that might make you a good fit for the Shrewsbury School Committee?
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Massachusetts with a degree in English and journalism, and then I got my master's in education and my licensure for high school English. I taught 9th and 10th grade English in a Massachusetts public school. And then I also taught English to English language learners at a community college when we lived in Texas for a few years. And now I'm the administrator of a local private school. So the reason I feel like that's a good fit is because I have an inside knowledge of not just being in a classroom with students, but also the administrative perspective, which can often be a little bit messier and more complicated. And I think that bringing that behind-the-scenes knowledge will be a helpful asset on the school committee.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting perspective. Do you happen to know if there are any educators on the school committee at this time?
I don't believe there currently are.
Okay,
no.
So that's an interesting way to kind of add that perspective from the classroom and, as you said, from the administrative perspective to the school committee. I think that's really fantastic. Do you have any vision for the school district that you feel you could share with us to tell us a little bit about how you envision the Shrewsbury School District?
My vision is to continue the excellent education that's provided here. It's just that from my experience here, I think that I offer a very unique lens because of my experience in the classroom as an administrator and also my experience as a parent and foster parent in the district. I'm able to kind of see the district from a lot of different angles. On one hand, I'm seeing all the positives that are coming in, and on the other hand, I'm able to kind of see blind spots. And I think that'll be really helpful for the school committee to be able to have that perspective.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I'd love for our community to learn a little bit more about you on a personal level, a little bit of a more informal level, so that they can get to know kind of what you're about. So I thought that maybe I would ask you, what are some of your favorite places to visit here in town?
So our family favorite restaurant is For Sure. If you ask my kids if they would like pizza, they will say no, and they would prefer to go to For Sure. They just love to have a big bowl of pho. That's probably our favorite place to order from in town. We like going to the local library. We love doing that. And we also like going to Dean Park. Sometimes we'll go for walks. They like the little pond. They try to throw bread, but I encourage them to throw peas instead. Everybody watching, throw peas, not bread. Those are our favorite things to do.
And that's great. Could you tell us a little bit about who your favorite teacher was and why, and how they may have inspired you?
I think my favorite teacher was my 10th grade teacher. So I went to 3 different high schools, so I kind of bounced around a lot. I started at Grafton High School where I grew up, and then we moved to Minnesota for a year, and then we moved to Northborough, and I graduated from Algonquin. So when I was in 10th grade, one of my teachers actually had me, my math teacher, she gave us an opportunity to teach a lesson in front of the class. And I was really shy at the time. So this was kind of stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit. But when I planned the lesson, I saw that I was able to engage the whole classroom and I was able to effectively teach what I had intended to teach. And through her, I guess, guidance, I was able to kind of realize that, you know, this is, I belong in education and this is where I can thrive. So she really, she was able to, and I think that's something that sometimes we focus a lot on, you know, you have to take this class, then you go to this school and you graduate. But I think if we spend more time paying attention to kids' skills at a younger level and helping them develop those skills, they can figure out kind of younger what they want to do and where they want to go, instead of, you know, wasting so much money the first or second year in college and still not knowing what they want to do. So yeah, I guess I picked that up from her. She was able to kind of give me that passion and help me identify that skill in myself.
Okay, that's awesome. That's a really interesting way to kind of spark that in somebody. And I mean, I think that's, and maybe you can speak a little bit to this, why it's so important to offer different types of classes, like a class where you might learn about cooking or baking, or you might learn about teaching, or I know at the high school, the students participate with the Little Colonials program and things like that. So it sounds like that's kind of what you're speaking to, kind of giving people opportunities to tap into different learning experiences.
Yeah, the high school offers a lot of different programs to try to help students kind of find what their niche is. I haven't experienced all of them, but I have 2 kids at the high school. I have experienced some of them. And I think that's really important because sometimes, you know, I mean, I think about my own time in college. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I did explore other majors because in my head I thought, okay, first year of college, you can just kind of goof around, do whatever. But really, I think you can do that at lower levels. You really, each child has their own individual capacity, and there is no, I mean, we're learning this now more than ever, there is no one-size-fits-all education. So it's really important for kids to be able to, you know, take that cooking class, learn these life skills, and then on top of that, kind of figure out, you know, where can I thrive? What am I really good at?
So I guess a follow-up question would be, if you could add an additional class to the high school curriculum that you feel like every student should get, what might that look like?
If I could add a class.
Yeah, you know, I hear people saying all the time, like, I never learned how to do taxes. I don't know how to register to vote. I don't know. Is there some kind of a class that you think would be useful for people to get that they're not getting?
That's really interesting. I have not actually thought about. So kind of, okay, I guess there's 2 things I might do. So one thing is that, you know, right now we're in a mental health crisis, and, you know, the wait lists to getting therapists for children is really long. So one idea I've had that's difficult to implement, but it's also perhaps an out-of-the-box solution, is to give kids course credit for getting mental health help in the school. So for example, instead of getting, you know, 3 credits for a directed study, that could be their time with their their outside therapist, either on Zoom or just making that kind of, you know, mental health progress as part of their curriculum. And some kids need it more than others. And, you know, these appointments after school, they're all filled, but if we can somehow integrate that into the school day, that could be a way to alleviate this huge burden that mental health professionals are getting and create additional alliances with local organizations. Other classes, I think maybe more foreign language classes. I know that Shrewsbury used to have them at younger levels, but I think that offering that really prepares our students for life outside school. And, you know, in our house, we speak 3 different languages, and it has just been so helpful in so many different ways to be able to speak those languages. I know it's not a requirement to take 4 years of foreign language, but having those options, at least, it really provides kids with an opportunity to become world citizens, really, and to interact with people all over the world.
Absolutely. You know, when I was in Shrewsbury schools, you started foreign language, I believe, in 5th or 6th grade. And I really credit that early start in foreign languages to why I was able to master a second language. And so I think that is so important, as you said, to kind of have that as an opportunity for our students. That's great. All right, now I guess more on the more personal side. What's the best field trip you ever went on as a student?
The best field trip? It's funny that we live in Massachusetts, so a lot of the field trips are, the
Standard.
the not so exciting Lexington and Concord field trip. But I think once we went to Canopy Lake Park, and that was awesome. I think I liked that one.
So you like roller coasters?
I love them, but I throw up every time.
Oh, okay.
I do,
So
but
we're
then
not gonna put you on any roller coasters.
I will go on them anyway because they're a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and then just
Suffer the consequences.
Yeah. And just keep going. But yeah.
Great. Okay, so, as you know, the world, this country, the state, and our community have been dealing for the last several years with the coronavirus pandemic. And we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which I think is really exciting for all of us, especially parents with young kids. Maybe not especially, but also parents with young kids, because, the education was disrupted. They had to switch to doing everything virtually in a very short period of time. Lots of questions about masking and about getting back into the schools and what that was going to look like. I was listening on the radio to Juliet Kayyem's new book about preparing for disaster, preparing for the worst case scenario. And how do you think Shrewsbury schools can do better to prepare for the next coronavirus pandemic, which won't likely be a pandemic, but something else that might somehow disrupt education? Is that important to you? Is that something that you've thought about at all?
It is, yeah. So it's interesting. So before I answer that, I kind of want to talk about what happened initially.
Absolutely,
Because so the schools initially shut down, and no one knew what was happening. And I was kind of comparing to my sister and friends in other districts, and Shrewsbury was one of the first to kind of come out with, to adapt and come out with, we're going to go online, we're ordering iPads for every student, putting out a weekly curriculum that will provide continuity for these students. So I think we really did an exemplary job for the most part with providing and making that transition. So now, we talk a lot about learning loss, but I think instead of calling it learning loss, we really need to kind of focus on this opportunity to do what you're saying, to kind of figure out how can we be adaptive to situations like this. Because, you look all over the world, there could be another coronavirus, there could be some kind of other public health disaster or something like that. And we really need to be able to quickly kind of, roll our sleeves up and be able to pivot back and forth. So I think this is really an opportunity to kind of rethink what education looks like in the first place, how to be more adaptive to these situations. And I think we're on the right path to that. And I think there is kind of that goal of creating that kind of continuity in those situations.
Yeah. I mean, the adapting technology in the classroom, allowing students to have access to the classroom from home, I think helped a lot of families be able to make sure that their kids didn't fall too far behind. And we know that there was some, but it sounds like Shrewsbury was really at the forefront kind of preventing that from being worse than it actually was, which is wonderful. Something I think people think about in town is, kind of what the school committee does and how can I access the school committee. And there's a lot of people who may feel intimidated by the public portion of the school committee meetings. How do you feel about how accessible the school committee is and about how we can make it possibly more accessible or maybe you think less accessible for the general public?
So a little bit of background there. I have participated in several public portions of school committees, and it's accessible in different ways depending on your comfort level. So I've in the past submitted a letter that was read by one of the school committee members, and I didn't even attend. I was just able to have my letter read on the record and hear the feedback from the school committee members. I've gone and spoken publicly and been able to have my comments addressed again. So there is those ways, and it kind of depends on people's comfort level. If you're more comfortable reading a letter, if you're more comfortable standing in front and presenting a soliloquy, there's both those options. In terms of being more accessible, I know some may disagree with this, but I think having a social media presence is helpful. I'm not necessarily advocating for school committee members going in and jumping into every single thread that's on there, but knowing that school committee members are, watching what people are talking about, engaging with stakeholders to see, what's going on, which we do a lot of that in our group, A Better Shrewsbury. We kind of post polls to kind of get a feel for what parents are thinking, what their concerns are, how they're feeling about certain initiatives. So I think social media does have a place there as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another way that school committee could be accessible. But there's also the newspaper that comes from the school. I don't know how many people read that. I think some people do. A lot of people watch the school committee meetings, but it's
actually the highest watched government program is our school committee meeting. So it's exciting to know that so many people care about it. As far as reaching younger audiences, I think that the social media idea is really a fascinating idea, and it also is timely, right? Because by the time the newspaper comes out, some of the issues have passed, and so having something that gives people instant access to the school committee, I think is
maybe
really...
a school committee TikTok page with some viral videos.
Maybe a Twitter
just do a little
music post, something like that. But I think something like that could make it a lot more accessible.
That's true.
And for students and for parents in town, and for other people interested in our schools. So I think that's
definitely
a great idea.
And I think off the same idea, I think, going into the schools and doing voter registration drives and educating kids about municipal elections and encouraging them to run as early as age 18. I know we have some that came right out of high school and ran for town meeting, but many of them feel intimidated by it. I've had conversations with high schoolers that have felt intimidated by it, and they don't need to be, because it's a democracy and their voice matters. When we talk about diversity of age is also a part of that. So if you have mostly people our age or older that are finally getting the confidence to join and run for these local offices, you're really not getting those diverse voices from our younger generations who should be setting policies for the future of our town.
Absolutely, and have a say. Another idea that I was thinking about, maybe just to get some feedback on, how would you feel about having maybe a student liaison to the school committee?
I think that would be a great idea. Yeah, I know that sometimes students come and make presentations, but having those mentorship opportunities really builds confidence to get kids engaged in their local government. Sometimes I think students feel like they're too detached from local government, school committee, these things, and when they need to access them, they have to go through this very formal process. But if we're able to create those kind of mentorship opportunities, that would probably increase political engagement.
Oh, wonderful. So you've been on the teaching side and the administrative side of a classroom, of a school. How, in your mind, can the school committee better support the faculty and administration and paraprofessionals here in town?
I think that the school committee does have a good relationship with the teachers union, so that's definitely something that I fully support as an educator. I also like the idea of maybe having a teacher liaison coming to the meetings, either as an unofficial board member or as a spectator, I guess, to offer feedback, because I really think that that's an important perspective, being in a classroom. We were just talking about the ability to pivot back and forth between online and in person. From a teacher's perspective, that is chaotic. Having to teach a classroom full of kids and simultaneously have a few. I've had to sub that way a few times in the last few months, because at our school, we were offering that for kids who are in forced quarantine. We would offer an online component. But that is just so difficult to manage, because the kids keep saying, I can't see what you're working on. And then the kids in person are asking, and it's just really chaotic. And if you haven't actually been in that position, it's very difficult to see through that lens. So having that teacher perspective, which, I can bring that perspective to the table as a past educator, but you really need someone that's like in a Shrewsbury school on the ground, consistently bringing that perspective to the table. And I think the district does do a good job with that, but I don't often see teachers at these board meetings, and I think that would be very beneficial to have that there, to have teachers giving live feedback to things that are moving forward and happening.
Absolutely. I love that idea. I love that idea. So you've also had a lot of experience with the schools from a parent perspective. And how do you feel parents have been engaging with the school committee, and how can the school committee be more accessible to parents in particular?
So I've served on a few committees in town, specifically the homework committee and also the redistricting committee. So I kind of noticed that there is a very specific demographic that's actually engaging with these committees when you ask for feedback. With the redistricting, we would put forward a plan, and then we would hear back from a few parents. And we wouldn't hear back from, people that can't access these meetings because of language barriers, people who don't necessarily pay attention because they're busy and working multiple jobs, or even working one job and having a full family at home. It takes a lot of time to actually sit and watch these meetings and access them. So I think that it's really important to engage specific stakeholders in all these decisions, because I think some people felt maybe blindsided by the redistricting because they weren't necessarily paying attention to every single meeting. And from an administrative point of view, that's also really difficult because you put out surveys, you put out email blasts, you say that you're available for conversations, and not everyone will take you up on that. So seeing the recent strategic plan from the town, I think, going into different specific pockets and asking everyone for their feedback and then kind of putting that together, I think that's something the schools need to do often. For the equity audit, they did the same thing. They kind of went and talked to specific groups, reached specific stakeholders to try to make sure you have a diverse array of voices in these large decisions.
That's wonderful. All right, so back on the getting to know you side of things, what would you say was your favorite school lunch as a student?
My favorite school lunch.
Did you buy school lunch? Did you bring school lunch? What was your?
So I grew up in Grafton, and I was the only non-white kid in the entire school. So initially, my mom would pack me, Persian food, and I loved Persian food. My favorite is this dish called horma sabzi. It's like herb based, and it has kidney beans, but it has fenugreek in it, which is a pretty potent herb. But it was my favorite, and any Persian kid or anyone who knows a Persian will tell you what an amazing dish this is. But when you're the only kid eating something different in the school, the kids will make fun of you for it. So I remember asking my mom, I would even yell at her sometimes and tell her, stop giving me Persian food, let me just buy lunch. And she ended up doing that. And it's interesting because, here I am with my own children in the district in 2022, and I'm having the same conversations with them. Because, I wake up in the morning, and for me, it's easier to just give them leftovers from the day before. And my first grader especially, she keeps asking me for turkey sandwiches or pizza because that's what the other kids are eating. The kids are telling her, your food smells, your food looks different, why are you eating that? It's happening a lot. So I'm kind of sad to still see that. So I guess going back to your question, after I preferred the Persian food, but I pretended to like the school cafeteria food. Probably liked the chicken nuggets. I really liked that.
Pizza Day was always a big hit when I was...
Pizza Day was okay.
Yeah, just okay.
It was just okay.
Just okay, yeah. I used to love Pizza Day. So.
Now I think they get Monty's pizza, so that's better. But at the time, whatever it was
like
some kind of frozen,
like Elio's or
partially defrosted thing. And it wasn't that good, but I pretended I liked it more than my mom's cooking because I didn't want to get made fun of.
That's wonderful. How do you see the school committee sort of interacting with the other boards and government entities in town? And do you see that as an important relationship to exist?
I do, and I think I see, from what I can see from the outside, I think there's a great relationship between the different boards. I think that's all I can really offer on that right now. But
I think it's an important part.
It is an important part to be able to interact as long as the priority for the school committee remains the schools. I think that's important because, the priority for the Board of Selectmen is to kind of have a bigger vision, and the schools are only part of that. But for the school committee, the priority is only the schools. So as long as that focus remains, I think having a relationship with all government entities is extremely important.
So if we could just circle back real quick to talking about, kind of making the school committee more accessible. I heard you say earlier about the meetings are long, they're every other week, they're at least an hour usually, and they're, in the evening when people are maybe dealing with bedtime stuff or finishing up dinner or just getting home from work for some families and individuals. Is there, maybe you don't know the answer to this, but maybe this is something you could just give some feedback on. Is there a mechanism for maybe an abridged version of action items that come out of the school committee to be distributed quickly with the public?
Currently, Dr. Sawyer sends an email like the day of, usually to all families, and he gives kind of a, he has his classic, like he gives a list of bullet points of what the school committee will be discussing and then tosses in a last minute joke. So I think that's been pretty effective, because families can kind of see, I'm really interested. They're going to discuss, redistricting, or they're going to discuss the mask mandates, so they can, tune in for those issues that they care about. The answer is I don't know. I don't know, because it's really complicated. As an administrator, it's like you look at these problems, which you can very clearly identify as a problem, but the solution is just so multifaceted that it's really hard to just directly address it. And I think this is one of them. How do you engage thousands of people with issues that they care about, but they don't necessarily know that it impacts them yet?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, those emails are great, and I think that's one of the reasons why people are even tuning in to school committee, because they're seeing, this impacts me and my family. I need to tune in.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, is there a way that people in town may be able to reach out to you to learn more or give you suggestions or hear more from you? What's the best way for people to stay in touch with you?
The best way is I set up an email address for myself, sanamforschoolcommittee@gmail.com. And I have a website, sanamforschoolcommittee.com. I have some signs everywhere. And I'm more than happy to engage with any topic. I've been active in the social media forums as well, answering some awesome questions. People are asking some really wide range of questions, which I think that speaks to the need to have diverse voices, because, you have parents voicing concerns for their kids in special education, some vocalizing concern for the Latinx community here in town, the LGBTQ community. Like, everybody is kind of coming in and seeing if their voices are being heard and what is going to be done. So I think
that's exciting.
Just seeing these questions, it was very exciting seeing where these questions are coming from and who they're coming from, and it was actually uplifting.
It is.
At first, I see all the questions and I was like, oh my God, I have to sit here all day and answer. But I love it. I love engaging with people on all these topics, and they were very good questions too.
That's wonderful.
So hit me with as many questions as you want. I will email with you all day.
So could you we have 1 minute left. If you could just let us know when the election is, and if you could just give us one last pitch for why we should vote for you for school committee.
Sure. The election is on May 3rd. I believe I would be a very strong asset to the school committee because of my background in education. My experience as a parent and a foster parent really gives me the ability to kind of see a very wide range of issues in the district and to identify potential blind spots and to offer multiple perspectives when issues arise. And I think I'm just generally pretty awesome. So I think that's why you should vote for me. But yeah, again, I'm happy to engage with anybody on any topic. sanamforschoolcommittee@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure indeed.